The sleek interstellar vessel descended through the atmosphere of Kepler 186f, kicking up clouds of red dust as it landed on the barren, rocky surface. Xenobiologist Zara Okoye emerged from the airlock, her heart racing with excitement and trepidation. She had been selected from thousands of applicants for this mission, to study the apex predator species known as the Krylox. Zara surveyed the hostile environment before her. Jagged mountains loomed in the distance, their peaks shrouded in a perpetual haze. The air was thin and laced with sulfurous fumes that stung her nostrils even through her breathing apparatus. But it was the eerie silence that unnerved her the most. She activated her hover cart and set out towards the designated research site, a few kilometers from the landing zone. The planet's gravity was slightly stronger than Earth's, making each step a laborious effort. As she walked, Zara reviewed the limited data on the Krylox, a species of highly intelligent, pack-hunting predators with no known natural enemies. Their fearsome reputation had only grown since their discovery by an unmanned probe a decade earlier. After an hour of hiking, Zara reached a small plateau that would serve as her base of operations. She spent the rest of the day setting up her inflatable habitat, solar panels, and perimeter sensors. As the twin moons of Kepler 186 rose over the horizon, bathing the landscape in an ethereal blue light, Zara couldn't shake the feeling that unseen eyes were watching her every move. Exhausted but determined, she settled in for her first night on this strange and dangerous world, knowing that the real work would begin in the morning. Zara's mind raced with possibilities. Could the Krylox be reasoned with? Was peaceful coexistence possible? She would need to be exceedingly cautious in her approach. One misstep would spell disaster both for her mission and her life. Over the next several days, Zara established a routine of exploration and observation around her outpost. She set up motion-activated cameras at strategic locations, hoping to capture footage of Krylox in their natural habitat. But so far, the predators had proven elusive. On the morning of the fifth day, Zara ventured farther than usual to collect plant samples from a distant ravine. As she knelt to examine a particularly vibrant purple fern, a low growl froze her in place. Heart pounding, she slowly turned her head to find herself face to face with a Krylox. The creature was magnificent, easily 3 meters tall at the shoulder, with rippling muscles beneath its iridescent green scales. Its eyes, a piercing gold with vertical slits, regarded Zara with a mix of curiosity and aggression. Curved, razor-sharp claws flexed on its forelimbs, each one as long as Zara's forearm. Time seemed to stand still as human and alien evaluated each other. Zara fought the urge to flee, knowing that any sudden movement would likely trigger the Krylox's predatory instincts. Instead, she slowly and deliberately reached for the pouch at her waist, extracting a small metallic device. The Krylox tensed, its nostrils flaring as it caught the scent of the foreign object. But rather than attacking, it cocked its head slightly, watching intently as Zara activated the device. A series of soothing, melodic tones filled the air, echoing off the ravine walls. To Zara's amazement, the Krylox's posture relaxed slightly, its eyes widening with what almost looked like recognition. It took a step back, then another, before turning and bounding away into the dense undergrowth. Zara released the breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Her hands shook as she replayed the encounter in her mind. The Krylox had displayed a level of restraint and intelligence that defied everything she'd been told about them. If they could be communicated with, reasoned with, the possibilities were staggering. She hurried back to her outpost, her mind buzzing with ideas. The key to success would be finding a way to build trust with the Krylox, one small step at a time. And she had an idea of where to start. Armed with newfound determination, Zara set about implementing her plan. She programmed her outpost's 3D printer to fabricate a variety of small, edible treats infused with nutrients and flavors that she hoped would appeal to the Krylox's taste buds. Each morning, she would venture a short distance from the outpost and leave a trail of these treats leading back to a clearing where she had set up a rudimentary feeding station. Beside the station, she placed a speaker that played a continuous loop of the same soothing tones that had calmed the Krylox during their first encounter. Days turned into weeks, and Zara began to worry that her efforts were in vain. But just as she was about to give up hope, her perseverance paid off. One afternoon, as she watched the live feed from a camera hidden near the feeding station, a young Krylox cautiously emerged from the tree line. Zara held her breath as the creature approached the station, sniffing the air with its large, flared nostrils. It hesitated for a long moment before snatching one of the treats in its jaws and quickly retreating back into the forest. Zara couldn't help but smile at the small victory. From that day forward, the young Krylox, whom Zara affectionately named Zephyr, returned to the feeding station regularly. Each time he lingered a bit longer, as if growing more comfortable with his surroundings. Zara gradually introduced new elements to their interactions, using a remote-controlled drone to deliver treats closer and closer to Zephyr while speaking to him in soft, reassuring tones through its built-in speaker. At first, Zephyr would retreat at the sight of the drone, but over time he grew accustomed to its presence. Weeks turned into months, and the bond between human and alien continued to grow. Zephyr began to show signs of non-aggression towards Zara, even going so far as to bring her small gifts of interesting rocks or plant matter he had collected. Zara knew that she still had a long way to go before she could fully understand and communicate with Zephyr and his kind. But for the first time since arriving on Kepler 186f, she allowed herself to feel a glimmer of hope. The experiment had yielded promising results, and she couldn't wait to see where this unprecedented relationship would lead. Zara moved swiftly through the dense undergrowth, her senses attuned to the slightest sound or movement. She knew that time was running out for Zephyr, and every second counted. As she approached a familiar clearing, she let out a series of low, trilling calls, a signal that she had learned from her interactions with the Krylox. Moments later, a dozen pairs of glowing eyes emerged from the shadows, followed by the sleek, muscular forms of Zephyr's packmates. Using her translation device and the rudimentary sign language she had developed, Zara quickly conveyed the situation to the Krylox. They listened intently, their agitation growing as they understood the threat posed by the expeditionary force. The matriarch of the pack, a grizzled, battle-scarred female whom Zara had named Nyx, stepped forward and fixed Zara with a piercing gaze. A series of rapid clicks and growls passed between them as they formulated a plan. Zara knew that they would need to act fast and strike hard if they were to stand any chance of success. With Nyx by her side, she led the pack through the forest towards the expeditionary force's encampment. As they approached the perimeter fence, Zara could see the soldiers patrolling with heavy weapons at the ready. She took a deep breath and nodded to Nyx, who let out an earth-shattering roar. The Krylox surged forward as one, their powerful legs propelling them over the fence and into the midst of the startled soldiers. Zara followed close behind, her tranquilizer gun at the ready. Chaos erupted as the Krylox tackled soldiers left and right, disarming them with lightning-fast strikes. Zara darted through the fray, scanning desperately for any sign of Zephyr. At last she spotted him, still trapped inside his containment cage on the far side of the compound. She fought her way towards him, ducking and weaving to avoid the soldiers' panicked fire. Just as she reached Zephyr's cage, Zara found herself face to face with Captain Simmons. The man's eyes widened in shock and rage as he leveled his weapon at her head. But before he could pull the trigger, Nyx appeared as if from nowhere, launching herself at Simmons and knocking him to the ground. The two rolled across the dirt, locked in a deadly struggle. With a burst of desperate strength, Zara wrenched open Zephyr's cage and freed him. The young Krylox nuzzled her gratefully before joining his packmates in subduing the remaining soldiers. As the dust settled, an eerie calm descended over the battlefield. Krylox and humans alike stared at each other warily over fallen weapons and shattered equipment. Captain Simmons, battered and bruised, but still defiant, glared up at Zara from where Nyx held him pinned to the ground. "This isn't over," he snarled. "You violated direct orders from High Command." There will be consequences. But Zara simply shook her head with a weary smile. Look around you, she said softly. The Krylox could have killed us all easily, but they didn't, because they understand something that we have forgotten. She turned to face Nyx and Zephyr, representatives of two vastly different worlds who had found common ground despite all odds. Cooperation leads to strength, she continued on. Friendship leads to understanding. As those words sank in all around them amongst friend-foe alike, they stood together, resilient, strong, having grown beyond fear towards hope. For while future held much uncertainty and change, one thing became crystal clear upon conflict turned cause. Once so close tragedy, divergent paths found destiny soared only through UNITI. Zara stood atop a rocky outcropping, scanning the horizon with her binoculars. In the distance, a plume of red dust rose from the plains, signaling the arrival of an unexpected visitor. Her heart sank as the outline of a human transport vehicle came into view. Moments later, her comms device crackled to life. Dr. Okoye, this is Captain Simmons of the Kepler 186 Expeditionary Force. We are here to take control of your operation. Zara's voice was steady as she replied, on whose authority? This is a peaceful scientific mission sanctioned by the Interstellar Research Council. The IRC's mandate has been overridden, Simmons said coldly. We have reason to believe that the Krylox pose a significant threat to human interests on this planet. Our orders are to capture and study them by any means necessary. A chill ran down Zara's spine as she watched a team of heavily armed soldiers disembark from the transport. She knew all too well the kind of study they had in mind: invasive experiments, behavioral conditioning, and worse. She turned to Zephyr, who had been watching the exchange with keen interest. We have to warn the others, she said urgently, activating her portable translation device. Your family is in danger. Zephyr's eyes widened in understanding. He let out a series of rapid clicks and chirps, then turned and bounded off into the forest. Zara knew he was going to gather the other Krylox and lead them to safety. But even as she prepared to confront the expeditionary force and buy Zephyr some time, Zara heard a commotion from the direction of her outpost. To her horror, she saw Simmons and his men dragging a struggling Zephyr into a containment cage. No, Zara screamed, racing down the hillside, but it was too late. The soldiers had already loaded Zephyr into their transport and were speeding away towards their own encampment. Zara's mind raced as she weighed her options. She couldn't stand by and watch as her friend, and the future of human-Krylox relations, was destroyed by short-sighted fear and aggression. But she was just one woman against a heavily armed military force. It was then that a daring idea began to take shape in her mind. She would need help, and lots of it, and she knew just where to find it. Zara set off into the forest at a run, her heart pounding with adrenaline and determination. One way or another, she would rescue Zephyr and prove to the galaxy that peaceful coexistence was possible, even with an apex predator. As Zara's bond with Zephyr deepened, she became increasingly curious about the Krylox's social structure and communication methods. She spent long hours observing their interactions through her cameras, noting the subtle nuances in their body language and vocalizations. One day, as Zara sat cross-legged at the edge of the clearing, Zephyr surprised her by cautiously approaching and settling down beside her. It was the closest they had ever been without the barrier of technology between them. With bated breath, Zara slowly extended her hand, palm up, towards Zephyr. The Krylox regarded her for a long moment before gently pressing his snout against her palm. The physical contact lasted only a few seconds, but it was a moment of profound connection that brought tears to Zara's eyes. In the weeks that followed, Zara and Zephyr's interactions became more frequent and more intimate. Zephyr allowed Zara to examine him more closely, revealing details about Krylox anatomy and physiology that had previously been unknown. More importantly, Zara began to decipher the complex system of vocalizations and gestures that the Krylox used to communicate. She discovered that they possessed a rich language filled with nuance and emotion, conveying concepts as abstract as loyalty, curiosity, and even humor. Through her relationship with Zephyr, Zara gained insight into the Krylox's hierarchical social structure, learning that they lived in tightly knit family groups led by a dominant matriarch. These groups cooperated with one another to defend their territory and hunt for food, displaying a level of coordination that rivaled that of Earth's most intelligent predators. As news of Zara's groundbreaking discoveries reached Earth and other human colonies, she found herself at the center of a media firestorm. Some hailed her as a visionary, while others accused her of anthropomorphizing a dangerous alien species. But Zara remained undaunted. She knew that her work had the potential to revolutionize human-alien relations and pave the way for peaceful coexistence. And with Zephyr by her side, she felt ready to face any challenge that lay ahead. Little did she know that her greatest test was just around the corner, and it would come from the most unexpected of places.